Thank you for listening to my daddy's podcast. Please subscribe to our channel.
All I gotta say is, who that? Hey, what's going on, Who Dat Nation? It is yours truly, Timothy J. Jones. And yes, I am the host of the State of the Saints podcast. And thank you so much for checking out the State of the Saints podcast, where we talk New Orleans Saints. And on this edition, we have a guest with us, a friend to the room. You definitely have read his articles from New Orleans Advocate, Times-Picayune. He covers the New Orleans Saints as well as the New Orleans Pelicans. And he's a good friend of mine, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Rod Walker. Rod, how you doing?
Doing good, man. I like your new intro.
Hey, man, appreciate it, man.
I think you had it the last time I was on here, so.
Yeah, man, like trying to change it up a little bit. I appreciate it. But Rod, thank you so much for being here. And man, it's such a pleasure to watch you along with the other Saints beat writers, doing the show where you cover the New Orleans Saints. That's my first question to you, because I never asked you this. Like, how did that come together, man? I mean, it just seems like you guys' chemistry is like on point. So how did that all come together?
That's a good question. It just. I mean, for me personally, I came when I moved to New Orleans back in 2013. I was covering high school sports mostly. Right. Eventually got moved up to covering the Saints, and we just kind of put a team together, and we do kind of click well. I think everybody kind of knows everybody's strong points, but as far as the people that work with me directly, but as far as the entire Saints media corps, I mean, we all, we get along pretty well, and everybody's just trying to get people the information. So just like you're doing, I mean, you're doing the same thing. You're trying to keep people informed and give our opinions on different things. And, I think it just says a lot about this fan base, because we have a lot of people who are covering this team, and we have a lot of hungry fans who want to know about it. So that's why, people like you are being, you're able to have such a big following, because we have so many people that want to hear all these different opinions.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you all do an outstanding job, man. I don't miss an episode. Like, I just like the way that you all bounce off each other. And like I said, I just think that the show is just absolutely dope. Like I said, I don't miss an episode. But
I appreciate that, man.
Yeah, but let's go ahead and talk a little bit about the New Orleans Saints. I mean, this has been like a very eventful offseason. I mean, it's been a long time since I've seen all season like this. Where it's like in years past, you kind of knew where the New Orleans Saints were going to go when it comes to maybe draft picks. It got kind of boring a little bit. Like, you knew like you going to have stability at the quarterback position, et cetera, et cetera. Just looking at this offseason, has it been like extremely eventful from your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, obviously when they made the coaching change back in the, last season and decided to get rid of Dennis Allen, I think that kind of had everybody just kind of excited about seeing what was next for this team, because it's been, the past few years haven't been great, haven't been in the playoffs, and that's obviously frustrated the fan base, understandably. And so I think the hiring of Kellen Moore, I think, it kind of got some people excited. Whoever they hired probably was going to excite people. I guess, I mean, they just wanted to see change, and that's what this franchise is now. They just want to see some change. So I think that's been exciting. To me, I don't think free agency has been that exciting. I mean, I don't think they really signed any guys that got everybody like fired up. Like, oh, this is our year. I mean, I just don't think they made those kind of moves. But I mean, it is good to see that they're doing some things, I guess. They re-signed Chase Young and signed Justin Reed. So I mean, they made some signings, but I don't think they made the kind that they're not gonna make you go out and buy some jerseys for the players.
Yeah, right.
But I think everybody's just kind of looking to see, what this team is about to do.
Yeah, I guess when I mean eventful, right? I mean so many different stories. Like as far as like the Saints going to all these different pro days. I mean the usual suspects are being re-signed by this team, but it's to a point where you don't really see the New Orleans Saints like hiring new head coaches, getting new coaching staffs, all that kind of stuff. So when I mean eventful, I mean like just from that perspective. Like as far as players, I definitely agree with you. I don't feel like the Saints have signed that one particular player that can galvanize this entire fan base to kind of get them on board. The pulse of the Who Dat Nation is a little bit up and down, especially when it comes to like certain players. Like, are you getting that from the fan base as well? Like, it may be fans are just trying to find something they can latch on to get excited about this 2025 season.
Yeah, I think so, and I think this draft is going to say a lot. I mean, I think once we get into that and find out what kind of players they bring in, what positions they try to address, they have a bunch of needs. I mean, this team, they got a bunch of needs. So I think that's going to say a lot about this team and what direction they're going in. As far as you kind of talked about the people they're inviting in and the people that are going to see. I mean, it seems like we've heard more this time than we've ever heard. I mean, like on some big names, and I mean, obviously since they're drafting 9th, which is higher than they've drafted in a while. So I'm sure that kind of adds some excitement to it too, because now you got a chance to get a player in here that can possibly be the face of the franchise or be a guy that can, definitely make an impact. So I think that definitely makes it a little more interesting this offseason.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about the draft. You said that they have the number 9 pick. I mean, that's a really good spot for a team that's trying to build something. I mean, you got opportunity to get like a really good generational type talent. But there's been a lot of talk about what direction the Saints need to go in. I mean, we've heard, guys like Ashton Genty, the running back out of Boise State, from that to maybe even Shedeur Sanders, the way that some of these other teams are setting themselves up. It's looking like maybe quarterback in this year's draft is not in the cards for them. So just looking at the New Orleans Saints, I mean, if you were the Saints, are you staying in that spot at 9, or are you trying to aggressively possibly move up a little bit to maybe get a quarterback, like Shedeur Sanders or even Cam Ward?
Well, for me, and let me preface this by saying I'm a big Shedeur Sanders fan. I don't know if maybe you, but I don't think a lot of people in the media have watched more Shedeur games than me, because I watched him even at Jackson State, and I know you have. I know you're the same way. Yeah. I'm really high on him. I think a lot of people use some of their, they might be anti-Deion, so they kind of hold it against Shedeur. But I think talent-wise, I think he's going to be a really good quarterback. I don't know how the Saints view him, though. I mean, if the Saints view him like that, I think he might be a guy I think he's a guy that you could try to go up and get him if you really, really like him. And you look at the draft order. I'm looking at it now. Like, I mean, Tennessee's going to probably go Cam Ward 1. You'd imagine that. Cleveland, you don't really know what they're going to do. They might be, But after that, I mean, you got a lot of teams that have quarterbacks already. The Giants got Russell now. Patriots got Drake May. Jags, I guess they're still satisfied with Trevor Lawrence. Raiders just signed Geno. The Jets signed Justin Fields. Panthers have Bryce Young. So, I mean, outside of those first 2 teams, I mean, there might not be, if Shedeur doesn't go to Cleveland, if they decide to go Travis Hunter or some other direction, Shedeur might be in reach if he's a guy. And again, this all goes back to how much the Saints really, really like him. And I mean, obviously, we know the situation with Derek Carr and all the money that got tied up in him. But I don't know, man. I think quarterback is a position that you could, it goes back to how much you really like them.
Yeah. Look, I really feel like Shedeur Sanders, he gets a bad rep when it comes to media. I guess, when we're talking about the quarterback position, I guess, the media wants you to be hat in hand, humble. But I look at you're playing one of the most premier positions in football. You're the face of the franchise. You have to have a level of confidence. I think that the biggest issue is maybe like the way that he's willing to tell you that how talented he is, how good he is, and maybe that rubs you the wrong way. But I watched every game this guy played from the time he was at Jackson State. That's my alma mater.
Right.
I mean, I watched him evolve from a guy that struggled with ball security in his freshman year, but he's always been a prolific passer. He's always been accurate no matter what the circumstances are. And a lot of people don't give him credit for this, but he's tough mentally and physically. When you're talking about a player's kid, sometimes they can get a rep of maybe not being tough enough because maybe they didn't, come from a certain environment. But he has always carried himself, and I think that he is a guy that believes in himself, and I think that the guys around him believe in him. Does that kind of stuff shouldn't matter. Like if a player has that level of confidence, shouldn't matter to an organization. I mean, we're talking about a guy who's just confident in himself. You never really hear anything bad about him in the news or anything like that. Like, should that type of stuff matters, the bravado that he comes with?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think. I mean, he has that confidence. And I think guys will rally around him. I mean, you saw it at Colorado. But to me, the thing that stands out about him the most is just how tough he was. I mean, he's playing behind a really well. I don't want to say the line was bad. But I mean, that offensive line struggled, especially last year. I mean, they got a little better this year. I mean, he took so many sacks, and he just kept getting up and kept playing. And I think that toughness is going to go a long way for him in the NFL. And so I just think he's a guy that. And again, if the Saints value him, I think he's worth it. I don't think if he's still there at 9, let's not even talk about trading up. If he's there at 9, still, like, I think he'll be one of those guys that, we be talking about this in 3 or 4 years. Like, man, you remember the Saints could have got Shedeur and they passed on him against him. I mean, we've seen it before. You still hear it about Lamar Jackson, So I think it could be one of those situations. I mean, if he falls to 9, I think for me, you got to get him. I think because this team needs this future quarterback, and I don't think they got Spencer Rattler and Jake Hayner and those kind of developmental guys But I mean, I think Shedeur's a guy that can come in and, I mean, if you get him at 9, I mean, you don't have to start him right away, but he's a guy that you can do like the Falcons did with Michael Penix last year. Make him the starter midway through the season or whenever it is. But I just think if Shedeur is there, I think you have to get him at 9.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you have to learn from your history. I think about Jordan Love. You had the opportunity to get him, like you mentioned, Lamar Jackson. So I feel like you have to learn from these type of things. I mean, you gotta trust the process and believe what your eyes are seeing at times. I know sometimes, when you're evaluating, those thoughts in the back of your mind, like, am I going to get this right? But I mean, when it comes to Shedeur Sanders, I think that he checks all the boxes. So if he's there, hopefully the Saints select him, because I think that he is going to be a generational talent. I think that he will be that guy, like we just alluded to at the beginning, could galvanize this fan base and get people excited about the future of this franchise.
Let me just mention Jackson Dart too, because I don't know how the Saints value him. I mean, they may think he's their guy, and if he's their guy, and I mean, you kind of think that one of those quarterbacks will probably be there at 9. I mean, if they really like Jackson Dart, get him. I mean, I just think quarterback is a position that. I mean, this team hadn't drafted one in the first round since Archie Manning. So if you can get one, you probably should get one and start thinking more about the future, because they have never really just had a good plan for what they were going to do after Drew Brees, and that's why they're in the situation they're in right now. Yeah,
I think I looked at Jackson Dart. Everybody was talking about his pro day, and I was at the combine ride, and I mean he was one of the best throwers out there. Nobody questions the arm ability of Jackson Dart. It's more like certain mechanics or any stuff like that. But I think that, I think it's saying a lot that we're seeing like a lot of the Saints brass going to some of these quarterback pro days. I think that speaks volumes. Not just sending like quality control guys or, guys on the scout team. Like they have a huge presence there. So, but that also leads me to my next question that involves Derek Carr. With the Saints brass showing up to all these pro days, what does that say about Derek Carr? Derek Carr, is a guy who got his contract restructured, but there are reports they're saying that he wanted to be traded. There were the talks about maybe possibly him not being on a team in 2025. So what do the Saints do with Derek Carr? How does that situation work?
We haven't talked. Nobody's really heard from Carr other than just like the report you mentioned. I'm really curious, like when he does come back for camp and all that. I just want to hear where he is, because I don't, we don't really know how, if he's happy or not happy. So that's kind of what I'm looking forward to hearing, because the fan base has definitely they've turned on him like totally. It's pretty brutal, man. I don't know. Like, I didn't make a lot out of the Super Bowl stuff. I know a lot of people did. I'm not sure what your thoughts were on that, but people think he should have been around, and maybe so. But I don't know what kind of previous obligations he had. So I try not to read too much into that. But then you hear the stuff about he wanted to be traded. Like you do wonder. Like, Derek Carr has a wife and kids. They live in this city. I'm sure they hear and read all the stuff that's been said about him. So if you're a quarterback, maybe you do want to go somewhere else and not have your family around that. So, so I don't know how happy he is, and I don't know if he can win his fan base over unless he goes 17-0 and then wins the Super Bowl. So, he's going to get booed probably this season every time something goes wrong. Maybe even before something goes wrong, because the fans just aren't happy with him right now. So, so as far as what the Saints want to do, I don't know what their plans is. We know what happened with the contract, and he didn't take a pay cut, which a lot of guys don't take pay cuts. So he feels like that's what he's worth, and they gave it to him. So Kellen Moore, maybe you can win with him, but I think either they can win with him this year. I think they do need to. I know he's going to count $69 million next year against the cap, but they need to. They just got to figure this quarterback thing out.
Yeah, when I look at Derek Carr, like I'll answer your question about him showing up to the Super Bowl. Yeah, I was kind of critical of him because he didn't show up. Because when you look at Derek Carr and some of the negative equity that he has when it comes to this fan base, like, you got to do everything that you can to try to show people that, like, you're a part of this city. Like, you're down there. You know how New Orleans work. Like, when you show your disloyalty in any way towards New Orleans, like like they won't forgive you for it. Like, you cover the Pelicans. They still haven't forgiven Anthony Davis and Chris Paul in some cases, right? Right. But you got to show this level of loyalty, and I just think that was a great opportunity for him to maybe show up and just be around and show the city of New Orleans and Saints fans that he was their guy. Now, I don't know what happened. If he has other obligations, I understand. But the fact that nobody really saw him, nobody really heard from him, I think that's very telling. And, Saints fans, when they don't hear from you, they start having those speculations. And when you have those speculations, it don't even have to be the truth. Just your mind just start running, racing, right? Your mind playing tricks on you, But I just think that was just an opportunity for him to do that. But look, I agree. Like, if that the fan base isn't happy with him, that more than likely you're going to bring him into a hostile environment, like 17 games out the year, because you go on a road, you get booed. You come home, you get booed. I don't know. I just think that the Saints need to figure this situation out. I think that he had an uphill battle in the beginning because he wasn't Drew Brees, right? It's hard to be the man after the man, right? Because everybody's like holding you to that standard. Like, I don't look at Teddy Bridgewater or Jameis Winston as the man after the man. Like, the Saints paid Derek Carr as if he was the succession plan. So everybody's comparing him to Drew Brees, and when he didn't show that he could be, I just think that a lot of Saints fans kind of soured on him. Yeah. So I honestly don't know what they can do, man.
Yeah, I was about to say I don't know what he can do, because I think even if Derek Carr had come to the Super Bowl and been out, to me, I think that was just a reason, just something else people could point at. Like, I don't know if he can do anything to win his fan base over. Like, I just don't. Like,
I agree.
Yeah, he has to go out and win some games, and that's it. Like, I don't think he can win the fan base back by going out in the community doing something. He gave, a lot of money to some families during Christmas time, and like, people don't really even talk about that because they're so focused on what he doesn't do. And so I just don't know if he can win the fan base over other than winning some games, a lot of games.
Do you think it's fair though? Like, do you think that some of the criticisms of Derek Carr are fair, or do you feel like the way that he's treated could be looked at as being unfair?
No, I mean I think some of it's, man, that's a good question actually. But, no, I think some of it is probably a little unfair. I just think he's a guy that, and I think it has a lot to do with the city of New Orleans. I think once you get to that point, like there's just nothing you can do. Like Derek Carr could go out and fill the Superdome up with people and give everybody $1,000 a piece and say, hey, this is a bonus just for me being here. And I just don't know if it would do anything. They just don't like. I mean, this team wants to win games. He's been hurt, and it started back with that first year here when he was fussing at Olave and him and Eric McCoy got into it, and I just think he kind of rubbed people wrong at the very first beginning. It was just kind of hard to get that back, and then the injuries, obviously, and some people probably like question some of the injuries, especially this last one. He's like, it's third down and he dives, and you got another down to play with. So I think a lot of this stuff just kind of rubbed people the wrong way. But
I feel Derek Carr. I think that a lot of the criticism that he faced has to do with the fact that he's not Drew Brees. I mean, Drew Brees was a franchise quarterback, and for the most part, Rod, he did everything right. Like, it's been times where the Saints have lost football games, and it's clear that Drew Brees wasn't the reason. He'll have like 350 yards, 4 touchdowns, but the defense probably wouldn't be on point that day. Right. But he'll take accountability for it. He'll use words like we or I, But when I think that the issue was with the whole Olave thing, where he was pointing up the field, and like I said, these are certain things that Saints fans like aren't really used to. Now, the older Saints fans kind of understand what the team was like when they weren't winning, but you have a really good sample size. Don't remember those times. They probably was too young or probably wasn't around. So all they know is Drew Brees and how Drew Brees carried himself in the most adverse times and even some of the most great times. And I just think that he's being compared to that. And when everybody kind of sees like how he operates, rather it's him being a quarterback or some of the things at the press conferences, I just think that people just kind of soured on him. And I agree with what you just said, because in the city of New Orleans, like once you show that, it's hard to get that back. It's hard. Like you said, going to the Superdome, giving out $1,000, like, man, like you that wouldn't be enough, because it's about loyalty. Like Saints fans want to feel like you are their guy. And I just never felt like it. I never felt like he nor Dennis Allen really embraced themselves like into like the fabric and the culture of New Orleans Saints football, which makes it easy for Saints fans to criticize everything he does, for better or for worse.
Yeah, I mean, he needed to. There are a bunch of situations where he probably need to hold himself accountable. People respect that. And I mean, then there were some plays, he makes it. I mean, sometimes he makes these throws, or he's just kind of throwing it up, or right before he gets hit, he'll just throw it up and it gets picked off. And I mean, those plays frustrate fans, obviously. And then there are the plays when he has this thing where if he's about to get sacked, he just throws it away, which it keeps you from being behind the chains. So I mean, I get why he does that, but I also understand that. I think fans want to see him make some plays. I don't know if he ever had a game where he went out and just won a game for the Saints. I think if they saw some of that, he had some games that they may have taken the lead, but then the defense may have given it up late. But he doesn't have that moment, those moments that you need to be embraced by this city. And I think if he could have ever got some of those, maybe his story would be different. But we'll see how it turns out this year.
Yeah, we'll see. But let's go ahead and talk a little bit more about this overall team. Like, we think about General Manager Mickey Loomis. He wasn't really in favor of Dennis Allen being fired, but here we are. Gail Benson, Dennis Lauscher decided to go ahead and pull that trigger, and now they hired Kellen Moore. But a lot of Saints fans probably thought that this was a simple change, but as the offseason, progressed, we noticed that he started to re-sign players that were on the team. Like, maybe, some of us thought that this was opportunity to change the culture, but this is Mickey Loomis in so many words, in my opinion, saying that there was nothing really wrong with this football team. But he's re-signing guys like Chase Young and Jawan Johnson. Are you shocked with that approach? Like that Mickey Loomis, basically tripled down on his stance when it comes to the injuries and the overall direction of the team. Like, are you shocked that he decided to bring back so many usual suspects?
I don't know if I'm shocked, because I think, like you said, I think that's kind of how they operate. They really feel like, and they probably always feel like this, they feel like everything that happened in that Sean Payton era, like they held on to it. And I think they feel like this team is right there. I mean, they think the injuries is what kept them from being successful. So they really haven't changed anything except the coaching staff when you look at it. So I think I think playing in a bad division helps with that. You probably feel like, oh, we're just right there, because you're always a game or two behind pretty much the Bucs and how the division works out. So I think that's been part of the thing. They just feel like they're right there. They feel like they're close. If they can ever stay healthy, they feel like it'll all come together, and we just haven't seen that yet. So they're basically running it back this year. They changed the coaching staff, but outside of that, you can say this team is running it back this year. And
yeah,
I don't know if that's going to. I think a new coach will have the fans at least interested in seeing. If you run it back with Dennis Allen, nobody's on board with that. But I think with a new coach, I think people will be intrigued to see if maybe he can get this offense going. And a lot of that's going to depend on how healthy these guys are.
Yeah. I think that Mickey is looking at the first two games of the season, and when the Saints they had all hands on deck, and they were out there beating the brakes off teams. Some would say, well, look how the Panthers season ended. Look how the Cowboys season ended, but he's not looking at it that way. So I look at it like I can understand, like DeMario, Cam Jordan, like these guys are still good players, and we know that the Saints being healthy, they can show you something. But I think the biggest issue when it comes to this team is depth. Like they have the next man up mentality, but there's such a huge drop off between the best player at that position and his backup. So that kind of calls for me to think about the NFL draft and the player evaluations here, right? Like when you look at this Saints team, like are they drafting correctly, or is it an issue with their process when it comes to player development? Because you look on one hand, like they drafted Zach Bond, right? I'm using him as an example. He was a third-round pick. They had him on special teams, but he couldn't never find a place on the field. He goes to Philly and becomes a first-team All-Pro. So on one hand, it's like you drafted a really good player, which it shows he's a really good player. Guys like Trey Hendrickson, like. Is it the fact that they have an issue when it comes to player development, or are they just not drafting the right guys?
I think it's a little of both, man. I think when you look at the Trey Hendrickson and Zach Bond, to me it was Zach Bond. You couldn't figure out how to use him, but he's shown that he's an NFL top tier player. Same with Trey Hendrickson, but on the other side, you got these guys that didn't quite pan out. The Marcus Davenports and the Peyton Turners. Those guys. Had potential but never reached it, always stayed hurt. Some really bad luck on those guys. And for the most part, this team, you go back to that 2017 draft with the good draft with Kamara and those guys. They did really good, but they haven't really hit like that since then. They had some guys for Wagner's. He's going to be a really good draft pick. I think Alante, Kool-Aid, those guys are going to be good, but you don't have the depth in those drafts. You got one or two good players, but just as far as hitting on three or four guys, they just have not been able to do that. And this team is paying. You can get away with that for 1 year, but you can't get away with that for 3 or 4 years. And
right,
it's going to catch up with you, especially with the way this team, handles their contracts and stuff. And you can't get these good guys on that first contract, let alone get them to the second one. So I think that's all just. Yeah. It adds up, and that's why this team was 5-12.
Yeah, I look at it like putting a square peg into a round hole. I think sometimes they draft players and they try to turn those players into something that they're not. You know, they'll probably put them at a position that they're not really relatively comfortable with. And you know, when they go to other teams, I feel like those teams probably utilize them based on their strengths. I think that could be an issue, and also just, you know, the evaluation. Like, I think a lot of times they rely too much on those athleticism skill tests in order for them to, you know, draft a player. Like, I just think that sometimes if a guy is showing you, like Jalen Carter, for example, like Jalen Carter showed you in college that he was a really talented player. Now he had like his, you know, his opportunities when it comes to certain things like his personality and stuff, but
right.
He showed you that he was a really good player. And I just think that sometimes maybe scouts talk themselves out of guys. Maybe they look at like how would they be able to, maybe they like how would he react inside of the locker room? Can he be coachable, et cetera, et cetera? But I just think that if you put the right coaches in place, which it seems like Kellen Moore is doing, it seems like he's bringing in not only good coaches, but good teachers as well. And I think like them coming from the college ranks could also help because they understand like trying to mold and shape these guys and remove them from outside distractions. You know, in college, you got a whole bunch of other stuff going on. So coaches focus on that as well. So maybe that's something that they actually need, like focusing on players that have played at a high level, showed you that they can actually get the job done. And maybe, you know, that can be able to help them. But I just think that a lot of overanalyzing may have caused this team, you know, to maybe kind of slip when it comes to some of the draft process.
I was going to just add on that. You know, they have these quote unquote prototypes. Like this guy has to be 6'9", his arms got to be this long, and that's kind of what they drafted guys like Davenport and Peyton Turner because they fit this prototype. And I just think sometimes you gotta, you know, watch what these guys did in college, look at who they played against in college, you know, and kind of take your chances on those kind of guys. So,
I think when it comes to like certain players, like that went to the University of Georgia, your stomping ground, Mississippi State, like they play at such a high level. And when we're talking about transitioning from like the SEC to the NFL, I feel like it's a little bit of a smooth transition. Like, you know, the guys are faster, stronger, etc. Like you have to adjust to that. But the lights aren't as bright because they're so used to being in that moment. I think that when you talk about some of these smaller school guys, you know, they probably have those measurables, but, you know, I think that you have to deal with building up their confidence and also, you know, them playing at a certain speed. Like, I think that has to play a role. I think that sometimes you just have to look at some of these guys when they're playing at you know, playing in these bowl games, you know, playing in all these big time moments. I just think that should, you know, that I think that should make you look at these players and maybe look at them possibly being on your football team and being able to add something to the squad. My final question for you is about the odds for the Saints. I believe it's like at 5.5 this season. Do you feel like the Saints could win more than 5 games? And if so, do you know what would it take in order for the Saints to get to maybe, you know, being an 8 or a 9 win team?
I think, well, the obvious answer is the team has to stay healthy. I mean, if they're not healthy, they don't have any shot at doing that. For me, and this team has a lot of holes on it. Like this roster has a lot of holes. I think when the draft comes around, whatever position they get, I'm gonna be like, okay, yeah, they needed one of those. So,
right.
Receiver is probably like my biggest concern, only because, I mean, you got Rashid, Chris Olave, and Brandon Cooks, who basically is like 3 of the same guy almost. I mean, you got some undersized, fast guys. All have kind of dealt with some injuries. So I don't know if those guys are going to, you know, can they go 17 games? I mean, that's what you need. So if they don't upgrade in the receiving corps, I think they need a big receiver. Like, I mean, they needed a Michael Thomas kind of guy. They haven't had him since he's left. So I think cornerback, I mean, I don't know how good, you got Kool-Aid and Alante. I think those are going to be some good players, but now you're counting on them. Last year, you had Marshawn and Adebo, going to the season. So I think cornerback's a little concerning too. But I do think this team, to answer your question, I do think this team can get over 5.5 wins if they stay healthy. And that's just what it's going to come down to. I don't know if this – I don't think I have a high ceiling for them as far as, like you said, 9 wins, which would be a winning season. I think that's kind of pushing it. I don't know if Kellen Moore is going to come in here and just – to me, you got a running back like Saquon Barkley. I think that makes life so much easier. The Saints don't have Saquon Barkley. I mean, you can try to, make the most out of Alvin Kamara, and maybe they draft a running back. I don't know, but I just don't know if this team gets over 9 wins, man. That's kind of pushing it. And again, like they may do something in the draft that may change my mind, but right now I wouldn't. I think I would go over 5.5, but you mentioned 8 or 9. I don't. To me, that's kind of pushing it.
But does the moves by Mickey Loomis change your perspective, when it comes to evaluating this team based on record? I think if he would have conceded, maybe indicated that he was hitting a reset button, maybe relying on the draft, maybe not bringing back so many guys, I think that maybe Saints fans will look at this season a little bit differently. Does that make you look at this season differently, the fact that he's bringing back guys instead of hitting that reset button? Because I think Saints fans would have been a little bit upset, but not as upset if the Saints would have indicated that they're hitting a reset button versus now it just seems like Mickey is telling us, okay, we're going to bring these guys back and we're going to show you that, okay, we're bringing in a better strength and conditioning coach. We're bringing in different guys that focus on analytics, etc. And we're going to show you that it was all about those injuries. Should we evaluate? I mean, should we look at things differently, and grade this team differently now that they brought back all these guys? How do you see that going?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the fan base. The fans wanted to reset. I think I'm going by social media, which I probably shouldn't go by. But I think people just wanted to see that this team was trying to go in a different direction and not just doing the same old thing, because they just feel like, okay, we're about to get duped again and we're gonna fall for this trick again.
Right.
So I think people are going to. I do think this is a kind of a free year for Kellen Moore, because I think most fans. I don't think most fans are optimistic. I mean, I think they're kind of going into it thinking, okay, the fans see this 5.5 win projection. They say, okay, this is probably where we are, and I know fans on the Arch Manning on that train. So I think this could be a bad year. If they ride this year out with Carr, I think the fans are obviously going to be frustrated with that. But if this doesn't go well, you got to move. You can't run this back again. So I think the new coach, if fans can see something, even if they don't win a lot of games, they're playing and. The Saints were losing, and they were kind of boring to watch. Truthful. So I think if they can at least kind of bring some excitement back and just give fans a glimmer of hope, okay, I think we're going in the right direction and trending in the right direction, I think that can kind of win some fans over.
Yeah. I look at the Dan Campbell's first year in Detroit. I think they may have won 3 games. And then the second year, they were on outside looking in. They end up eliminating the Green Bay Packers from playoff contention. And then after that, they went to the NFC Championship, and most recently went to the divisional round. But, I think it took them drafting well. That's when they started bringing in guys like Jahmyr Gibbs and Jamison Williams and Sam Laporta. Hey. So, yeah. So when you look at, the Saints, they can be in the same territory. I don't think anything that happens this year will have Saints fans looking at Kellen Moore any differently than what they do right now. I think that if they draft well, like you said, like we said at the beginning of this interview, if the New Orleans Saints give the Saints fans something to be excited about, maybe a player that comes in, make an immediate impact, it makes you optimistic about the future. But if it's the same old song and dance, and like you just said, just boring football, and you're just watching this because I grew up a Saints fan, and I remember watching it with my grandmama and my daddy and all that kind of stuff. I just think that Saints fans are going to feel dejected, and they're not going to, look forward to watching this football team. So the Saints are, in my opinion, kind of at a crossroads here. Like, I think fans understand that you have some opportunities to grow, but at the same time, they want to see that you're actually trying to build something for the future. But if they can show a little glimmer of hope, I think that people will start having patience and start trusting the process. But it's going to take some work from the New Orleans Saints organization to get these fans back on board, in my opinion. But Rod, thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. Tell us how we can get in touch with you.
Well, as far as reading my stuff, is on NOLA.com, and there's like a Saints tab and my name under it. And on Twitter, I am Rod Walker NOLA. I can't ever remember what it is. Yeah, Rod Walker NOLA on X, for those who still use X, and then I'm on Blue Sky as well. I'd recommend people to go over to Blue Sky and check me out as well. I think it's the same, rodwalker.bluesky. Whatever it is on Blue Sky, but yeah.
but I always appreciate speaking with you, talking New Orleans Saints. Look forward to reading your articles, and also the Saints Reporter show that you all do, and checking that out during this off season as well as the regular season. I really do appreciate your time, man.
All right, man. Thanks for having me on, and I'm looking forward to this draft and seeing what the future holds for this team.
Hey, I'm actually excited about it. I mean, like you said, there's so many ways that they can approach the draft. So, I mean, as long as they're not drafting a punter or kicking the first round, I think we're going to be in good shape.
Right. Everybody should be happy this time with the draft, yeah. So.
Exactly. Yeah. Thank you so much, man.